So I recently got this following email. Hey Josh, I hope you're phenomenal, my friend. Just a note to say how much I enjoy connecting with you on your podcast. It was such a lovely experience, and I truly appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. I'd love to stay in touch and keep the conversation going. I'm excited to share that we are in the final steps of launching our own podcast, and I'll forego the name of it here, where we teach how to master your mind, expand your wealth, and enhance your health. As we're getting everything ready, I was wondering if you had any particular suggestions or tips for running a successful podcast. I really loved how you operated yours, so any insights, tricks, ideas, etc. would be incredibly valuable if you're willing to share. I love to pick your brain about what works best in this space. Excited to hear from you and hopefully collaborate more in the future. And I'll forgo who this was just for anonymity, but thought, instead of a personalized response, which it will still be in some sense, why not just make this kind of a behind the scenes podcasting operation type thing for anyone else interested in this? And this won't be linear and it won't appeal to everybody. This is more geared towards obviously people who want to do a podcast and maybe know a little bit more about what happens behind the scenes. So been doing this maybe since 2020, and I started it bootstrapping it. So I've done every single thing myself except for a few things, right? The main thing is getting a host, having a recording software, and putting out episodes, pretty basic, straightforward things. There's a few things I recorded too that I had to have professionals edit on like Fiverr, this freelancing site that I really wanted to keep, but the editing was just too hard for me. So you learn over time about what takes a lot of time with the editing process, how perfect I want it to be, how raw I want it to be. So there's pros and cons to each of this. I'll go into some of those. Of course, when you do it from scratch yourself, then it's going to take a lot more time and energy. However, you will know all the kind of ins and outs of all the processes from those you want to delegate some of the work to. Now, I don't have experience with a collaboration, so that's one thing that I lack on experience if it's going to be a whole team doing this. But at least from doing it all myself, I kind of know the ins and outs of some of the low quality processes. If you're not going to be charging for it, then the pro is that you don't have to do too much editing, too much high quality stuff since it's free. However, if you want it to be widely successful, of course, the more time and effort, energy and quality controls you have on it, the more well received it's going to be. It took me time just to have it take off. And I think where it starts from is just having a kind of vision and purpose for what you want it to be. It's kind of a given. And just keep hammering at it, and it just took time for it to finally take off. But at the core of that, really caring about what I wanted to do. And it's really hard to explain. It was just kind of a calling and just knowing what to do. And then leaving myself enough free space in this project to just follow my heart's fancy in some cases and try a lot of different experiments. I left room open for a series for Awakening and Change, so like a mini series within the main podcast. I did one-offs, before I got into interviewing people. I found people in real life to interview. I sent off emails to quite a few people that were like dream guests, really wondering if they'll get back or not, no big deal. And then I found this service, Podmatch. It helps link up guest and host. And then at one point I was saying yes to everybody. And then I got into the space where I just have to turn down so many people because they're just either not a good fit or there's just not simply enough time and maybe even inclination of doing that. Doing experimental projects like What is Light and How You Know, just go around asking all kinds of people, really spending extra time on those that I wanted to talk to and having them back on multiple times. Another thing is leveraging kind of byproducts or recording things that people normally wouldn't record. So when I was doing live events on Insight Timer, I would have a recording and then I would later release that as a podcast. And now Insight Timer even has premium audio products too. Getting this on other platforms, there's certain services that will kind of submit to all kinds of platforms. Definitely, once it's set up, the distribution is kind of easier to go out to multiple platforms. In working one's network, there's so much that goes into these things behind the scenes that people don't see. But reaching out like the one who wrote to me is a great idea. Everybody loves to talk about what they're interested in. So reaching out to those you're involved with to pick their brain, a lot of people will be very responsive to that. It makes them feel kind of seen, heard, needed, acknowledged, valued, validated. And plus it helps the one asking, so where they don't have to go out and hire someone new or a consultant or even a coach maybe to get certain expertise and advice. So it works both ways. It's a great idea. I found myself connecting a lot of people too, even not involved in the shows. People would reach out asking for resources or just having, oh, this person would love, it would be great if this person could talk to that person about this topic, and connecting people, which helps the community, helps the world at large, will help me and audience as well. I think why passion or enthusiasm needs to be brought to the project and keeping one's head down and just keep going with what one just feels needs to be done and how one needs to be it. That needs to be balanced with being open to feedback, criticism, being able to change direction, and even being able to scrap the project if it's something where anything were to happen. So I think that kind of balance is helpful as well, and just using intuition, discernment, and internal guidance on how to make decisions kind of on the micro and the macro. As far as tools of the trade, there's plenty of things out there. I bootstrapped with free tools like Audacity and GarageBand, somewhat decent microphone, but also even using the microphone on the Mac and phone. There's apps of this. There's plenty of information out there. The big thing around this is workflow, though, like from kind of start to finish, from the scheduling process to the recording to the editing to the publication and the release time, and then the follow-up if anything needs to be done there, and then promotion. I didn't promote integrating presence as much as I could have. Just like to jump in with the content and maybe come back to promotion later if I could. But it all depends on what you want and your needs are. Of course, there's all kinds of assistance with this. That's dependent on time and budget. As far as the actual conversation itself, which is the crux, the most important part, it went from years before doing this to working behind the scenes where it's absolutely terrified to step in front of the microphone to that's probably the most enjoyable part of this whole thing. Why shouldn't it be? That's why our hosts would want to do a podcast to begin with. So I don't do scripts for the most part. I did a script for my course, so I didn't want them to waste any time or deal with any frivolous extras or anything like that. I wanted it to be a finely refined product. What's nice about not a lot of editing is it shows kind of a realness, although it can be a little bit distracting, a lot of things, a little bit rough around the edges. Some people like that, some people don't. It is a craft. So think about what kind of questions would you love for people to ask you that they never ask you? And I think it comes down to a genuine interest in the other person. And even if that's lacking a little bit, more than likely there's going to be common ground for mutual interest. And I'm not afraid to hold people's feet to the fire if I think it's going to be beneficial to them, to me, and the audience. Can do it in a kind way. Of course, authenticity and integrity are really good in these instances, and there'll be strengths and weaknesses that we have. Of course, one of my weaknesses is this ums and ahs and not being able to pause and be comfortable with pausing, to fill gaps instead of stammering. So with these weaknesses, just making a resolve, whatever they may be, to be open to receiving the right knowledge, information, and folks to come along and help strengthen those weaknesses. I had a speaking coach on, and then another one who teaches corporations to present publicly, public presentations. So this has helped quite tremendously compared to where I was when I started. So let me read a blog post I have now. It's called Grandiose Thought Experiments to Show Up Like Never Before. How can you really show up and have a presence? So these are just experimental things to think about when it comes to this. This isn't for those with huge egos, nor for those subject to delusions of grandeur. It's for those who belittle themselves and for those who've been belittled, who think and feel, why bother? My day-to-day life is insignificant and greatness is only for a select few. Imagine showing up for every interaction like you were, one, delivering life-altering news like doctors do every day, birth, cancer, loved ones dead after surgery, etc. Imagine on the level of the president or world leader announcing a nationwide disaster or war. Number three, part of one of the biggest pranks or hoaxes of all time. Four, contributing to many listeners' most vivid and lasting memories. Five, meeting the architect of the Matrix movies, where depending on how it goes, the entire reality itself hangs in the balance. Number six, granted significant fame soon after, guaranteed. Number seven, assured to fall into ill repute or infamy soon afterwards. Number eight, experiencing the airing of War of the Worlds radio drama in reverse, where instead of hearing an announcement beforehand that this was just a make-believe drama where most people missed the key point and took it to be real, you actually interact as if this was just another fancy production to be consumed and forgotten about, but found out later, no, it was just as important as an alien invasion. Number nine, we're tipped off that somebody's goons were waiting to take you out afterwards. How would you then show up to your last interaction under such circumstances? I'll stop there, but the point is to elicit these really heightened states of showing up and interacting in life. Of course, it's to highlight the other extreme because most people are just like, oh, yeah, whatever, no big deal. We take our interactions for granted. So, but to balance this kind of extremely important interactions, it would be like not taking oneself too seriously, right? This isn't as big a deal as I thought. This can be a natural, free flow, relaxing conversation, and it's not that big a deal. So that's the other end of the spectrum too. This is one of the most absolutely critical times in my life where every single moment of every single word matters. So I think that's kind of one of the spectrums when showing up and doing a podcast and talking. So finding the kind of right flow and balance and ground and interest and ideals. Where is it natural? Where is it authentic? And where can I push the boundaries and where should I draw back at? So those are just a few things behind the podcasting I've done here for a few years. Hopefully someone has found this or parts of this helpful.